The Central Bank of Nigeria has issued new guidelines restricting the amount of cash that travelers can receive when assessing their personal travel allowance or business travel allowance from bureau de change operators. Under the revised rules, beneficiaries can take only 25% of their approved foreign currency entitlement in cash, while the remaining 75% must be loaded onto a prepaid card. Welcome to Business Points, where we extract the Nigerian economy and the government policies. I am Kike Lomo Okere. According to the Central Bank of Nigeria updated guidelines on ongoing reform in the BDC sector, eligible travelers may access up to $4,000 for personal travel allowance or $5,000 for business travel allowance within a single quarter. The bank emphasizes that customers must provide all required travel and identification documents before funds are released. The regulatory update also clarifies access to foreign exchange for medical and educational purposes. Nigerians seeking medical treatment abroad can obtain up to $5,000 from BDC for approved medical expenses upon presentation of necessary documents. If required amount exceeds this limit, individuals are expected to approach their commercial or non-interest bank to secure the balance. For students or sponsors paying school fees overseas, BDC are permitted to provide up to $10,000 per year, provided that all documentation outlined in the guidelines is submitted. The new 25% cash cap is part of the CBN's wider strategy to tighten oversight of foreign exchange distribution and reduce cash-based transactions in the BDC segment. By shifting most disbursements to prepaid cards, the Apex Bank aims to curb leakages, limit arbitrage opportunities, and promote traceability. These measures also reflect efforts to stabilize the FX market by ensuring that travel allowances are used strictly for legitimate purpose and not diverted into parallel market speculations. Nigerian Contributory Pension Scheme continued its upward growth trajectory in October 2025 as total pension fund assets climbed to 26.66 trillion naira. This represents a month-on-month increase of 2.2%. The 26.09 trillion naira recorded in September. The figure were contained in the National Pension Commission unaudited industry portfolio report for the period ending October 31st, 2025. A review of the asset position shows that federal government securities remain the backbone of pension investment. Holding in this category rose from 15.7 trillion naira to 15.9 trillion naira, accounting for the largest share of pension assets. Within this segment, investment in the FGN bond increased to 15.1 trillion naira, while Treasury bill momentums continue in the third quarter of 2025 alone, when 2.06 billion naira was recovered from 49 non-compliance employers, who warns that persistent failure by employers to remit pension deduction undermine the core objective of the pension system. She stressed that PENCOM is shifting from encouraging voluntary compliance to mandating strict enforcement to protect workers' retirement benefits. She also highlighted a newly signed memorandum of understanding with the Independent Corrupt Practice and Other Related Offences Commission. The agreement strengthens enforcement by enabling ICPC to hold executives of defaulting organizations personally accountable, with pension violation now carrying potential criminal consequences. The DG described this as a significant step towards ensuring that employers can no longer evade their obligation to workers. This steady rise in the pension fund assets underscores the growing stability of the Nigerian CPS and the continued dominance of government securities as safe investment anchor. However, the persistent challenges of the employer's default remains its systemic risk. PENCOM's shift towards stricter enforcement supported by ICPC involvement signals a tougher regulation environment designed to protect contributors and restore confidence in the pension system. If sustained, these measures could strengthen long-term compliance, deepen asset accumulation, and enhance the overall credibility of Nigerian pension sector. The Nigerian domestic petroleum supply received a significant boost in November 2025, driven largely by increased output from Dangote Refinery and complementary imports by NNPC Limited. Data from the Nigerian Midstream and Downstream Petroleum Regulatory Authority shows that the average daily supply of the premium motor spirit rose by 37.7% to 23.52 million liters per day, up from 17.08 million liters in October. Petroleum imports also surged sharply during the month, increasing by 80.27% to 52.1 million liters per day, compared with 28.9 million liters the previous month. Combined domestic production and import pushed total average daily supply to 71.5 million liters in November. NMDPRA explained that the spike in the supply was partly due to unusual low delivery volumes recorded in September and October, which dipped below national demand. The agency noted that efforts to rebuild reserves ahead of the high consumption festive season also contributed to the increase. In addition, 12 petroleum-bearing vessels expected in October were delayed and discharged their cargoes in November, further lifting supply figures. The regulatory estimated average daily petroleum consumption at 52.9 million liters during the review period, putting national stock sufficiency at 16.65 days. However, Nigerian four state-owned refinery remain non-operational with no confirmed restart date. NNPCL has continued to explore technical partnership to revive the facility. According to the company Group Chief Executive Officer Bayo Ojulari, the refinery requires not only rehabilitation but extensive design upgrades to meet modern fuel specification. He stressed that without redesigning the higher grade standards, the plant output will lag far beyond both Dangote Refinery products and international benchmarks. The sharp rise in the domestic petrol supply highlights the growing impact of the Dangote Refinery on Nigeria's downstream sector, signaling progress towards reducing dependence on imports. However, a continued reliance on emergency import volume, especially full supply stability, remains a work in progress. The external sources to meet national demand. The push for the technical partnership and refinery upgrades suggests that Nigeria recognizes the urgent need to modernize its refining capacity if it hopes to achieve long-term energy security and reduce exposure to volatile global fuel markets. Emerging markets are at risk of falling further behind in the global sustainability transition as they grapple with massive annually environmental, social, and governance ESG financing shortfall estimated at $3.7 trillion. This is the key finding of the New Dean and Bradstreet report titled ESG Funding in Emerging Markets, which explores how stronger data system, clearer regulations, and financial innovation can help redirect sustainable capital flows to regions most in need, particularly South Asia, the Middle East, and Africa. According to the global data and business intelligence firm, the funding gap reflects the annual investments required for developing economies to achieve the United nation's sustainable development goal by 2030. The report warns that despite the rapid growth of ESG finance globally, emerging markets are not benefiting proportionately from the expanding pool of sustainability-linked capital. ESG investment has grown into $3 trillion global market, with flow accelerating as government and corporations commit to climate and social targets. On the average, sustainable fund attracts an estimated $1.6 million in the new investment every minute, and projection shows that by 2025, 1/3 of the global investment dollars will be ESG related. Yet, most of this capital continues to concentrate in developed economies, deepening the divide between advanced and developing markets in the race towards low carbon development. The report attributed the disparity to several structural barriers. While emerging markets contribute about 60% of global GDP and 75% of global emissions, they still face higher borrowing costs, limited access to long-term financing, weak sustainability disclosure standards, and inconsistent regulatory framework. These factors raise perceived investment risk and discourage large-scale ESG inflow. Africa remains the least active participant in the global green bond market, accounting for less than 1% of total issuance of 2023. Europe, meanwhile, dominates the space, supported by mature regulatory system, carbon pricing mechanism, and strong investors' appetite for sustainable assets. Despite this gap, the report highlights a few encouraging developments. Saudi Arabia green financing framework is directing funds to low carbon projects under Vision 2030. Thailand issued Asia's first sovereign sustainability-linked bond in 2024, and South Africa Just Energy Transition Partnership has secured $5.1 billion in EU backing to support its shift from local to renewable energy. However, the report stressed that these gains remain relatively small compared to the scale of global funding needs. Regulatory alignment stands out as the most critical factor for accelerating ESG capital flow. Countries such as China, India, Singapore, and South Africa are moving towards compulsory ESG reporting, anti-greenwashing rules for investment funds, and national taxonomies, all measures that reduce uncertainty for investors. Nigeria, however, remains at early stage with voluntary disclosure practice and broad sustainable financing guidelines. Analysts caution that without strong enforcement and harmonized standards, Nigerian companies and financial institutions may struggle to attract the sustainability-linked financing required to meet national climate and development objectives. The report recommends coordinated ESG taxonomies, blended finance model to de-risk early-stage projects, improve ESG data infrastructure, and deeper engagement from domestic financial institutions. While emerging markets face the largest funding gaps, they also present the biggest opportunity for transformative ESG investment, provided that right financial regulatory framework are put in place. This report underscores a critical imbalance at the heart of global sustainable finance. While emerging markets bear the brunt of climate vulnerable and development challenges, they attract only a fraction of global ESG capital. Without regulatory reforms, stronger data system, and innovating financing structure, the $3.7 trillion annual gap will persist, slowing progress towards the SDGs for countries like Nigeria. The message is clear: enhancing disclosure standards, strengthening enforcement, and aligning with global ESG framework will be essential to unlock investment flow needed for long-term resilience and sustainable growth. All right, let's take a quick short break now. We'll be right back. Don't go away. Stay with us. He emphasized that the transition will strengthen collaboration among tax authorities, improve information sharing system, and enhance compliance nationwide. Adedeji noted that state revenue agencies and other relevant institutions must complete all necessary adjustments before the new tax act take effect. He added that the reform aims to create a more unified revenue administration models, better alignment in tax policy implementation, and stronger non-oil revenue mobilization. The Executive Secretary, Joint Tax Board, Olusegun Adesokun, highlighted that transition will bring practical benefits for taxpayers by reducing duplication, simplifying processes, and enhancing visibility across the tax system. It reveals that work is underway on a national taxpayer database that will integrate foundation identification data such as NIN and corporate registration records to ensure accurate and secure issuance of tax identification number. The executive chairman of the Lagos State Internal Revenue Service, Ayodele Subaru, says the new Joint Revenue Board will centralize coordination among all revenue agencies, helping to harmonize taxes and create a more predictable business environment. He underscores the importance of public awareness, noting that citizens must clearly understand how the reform affects them. The full transition is expected to be completed by beginning of 2026, when the new tax law officially comes into force. The transition from the Joint Tax Board to Joint Revenue Board marks one of the most significant restructuring of the Nigerian tax administration system in decades. By centralizing coordination, digitizing taxpayers' data, and harmonizing laws across states, the reform aims to reduce inefficiency and improve compliance, key step for boosting non-oil revenue. However, the success of the transition will depend on strong interagency cooperation, effective communication to the public, and sustained investment in technology and enforcement. The new structure presents a major opportunity to modernize Nigeria's tax ecosystem, but implementation will be the true test. All right, before we call it a wrap on Business Point this morning, let's take a look at the FX market. The Naira maintained a stable performance against the US dollar on Thursday, December 11, 2025, as both official and parallel market indicators continue to converge, reflecting stronger liquidity and improved market discipline. Data from the FMDQ Security Exchange shows that Naira trading at 1,451 Naira per dollar in the Nigerian foreign exchange market. The currency has remained within 1,450 Naira to 1,452 band all week, reinforcing a sustained period of calm in the official window. Market analysts linked the improved stability to steady foreign capital inflow, now above $20 billion year to date, alongside the Central Bank of Nigeria restructuring of the Bureau de change segment, which has helped reduce speculations and volatility. In the parallel market, dollar currently sells at 1,490 Naira and buys at 1,475 Naira. Data monitored from the Street Traders and rates tracking platform indicates that gaps between both markets has narrowed to 35 to 40 Naira, signaling fewer arbitrage opportunities and greater efficiency in the FX price discovery. On the market outlook, Nigeria external reserve currently around $45.3 billion have added to buffer to the currency as foreign exchange demand typically rises during the festive season. The Central Bank of Nigeria tightened regulatory framework for BDC is also helping to curb distortion in the retail FX market. While investors remain cautiously optimistic, attention is shifting to the U.S. Federal Reserve forthcoming policy action. Any global softening of the dollar could further strengthen emerging market currency, including the naira. The narrowing gap between the official and the parallel market suggests a more coordinated and efficient foreign exchange environment, improved liquidity, regulatory tightening, and stronger external reserve are jointly supporting the naira stability. However, global monetary decision, especially from the U.S. Federal Reserve, remains a critical external risk factor in the weeks ahead. All right, this is where we'll call it a wrap on Business Point today. Join me again tomorrow on Global Television, channel 365 on DSTV and 276 on Star Times. To stay connected, kindly follow us on all our social media platforms using @Global TV NG. Till I come your way again, I am Kike Lomo Ukeri. I celebrate you all.